All right, and we're back. This is the fourth. Is this the fourth one?
I believe so,
Yeah,
yes.
fourth MSNS podcast.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Ryan Lamb.
Uh,
I'm still a sophomore too.
I'm Toby Lin, still a senior two, hopefully graduating. And we've been gone for a week as
hmm
nursing gets busy, but
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah. How you doing, Toby?
Been all right. Been all right. It's been I think trying few weeks. There's been a lot going on, but
hmm
getting by as we all are, making the best
Yeah.
of a tough situation, I think. How about you?
hmm I'm doing okay for the most part. Like in terms of, the shelter in place order and just staying home all the time. I'm getting a lot more used to it,
Yeah.
which also in a way scares me because like hopefully once all this is over, I feel like once that starts up again, I need to change my habits again
Yeah.
because before this I used to be a very active person, always loving to stay outside and hang out with everybody.
Hmm.
And then now I'm just confined to these four walls in my house.
Yeah.
uh, but but yeah, I am getting used to it. I'm getting my studying schedule back into place, luckily towards the end of the semester, and as the HESI approaches, which I'm pretty nervous about. I don't know, because you know how like I told you and you found out yourself how like for the sophomore two HESI, instead of it being on March 12th, I don't know if it's official yet, but they're like heavily considering moving it to April 30th so that we can try again if we don't pass the first time on May 12th
Mm-hmm.
without having to do remediation or paying the $2,000, however much it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I got before I thought I had 4 weeks of study. Now I have 2 weeks, and I'm just doing my best, grinding now.
Yeah. I mean, earlier, I think from experience, I think earlier is definitely better. If especially if you get two tries, then
hmm
you really get to use it as practice, and it's a lot less stress than a one and done type of situation.
hmm Yeah, I feel like I don't know if it's just me, but there's always just so much pressure surrounding the HESI, especially the sophomore two one. Like I
Yeah.
don't know if it's because I don't know if it's just hyped up or if it's just a lack of context or information about the actual HESI, but it just seems like the most daunting thing as a sophomore two. Just like, oh, you still got to worry about finals, and then you got to study for the HESI on its own. But I feel like even though you do need to study and practice for the HESI alone, isn't it a nursing test? So shouldn't like sophomore one and sophomore two be on the materials that will be on the HESI, right? In a way.
Um, so the thing that I think a common misconception that we have is that the nursing program is there to prepare us for the HESI, which is there to prepare us for the NCLEX, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you switch the script around, really nursing school in its name, right? It's nursing school, so it's school to prepare you to be a nurse. The HESI and
Yeah.
the NCLEX are merely obstacles or hoops that you have to jump through in order to get to that goal, right? The goal at the end of it is to be a nurse. And
Mm-hmm.
so, in a way, the NCLEX and the HESI are just a sort of necessary evil. They don't measure your capabilities as a nurse
Mm-hmm.
because you simply can't really measure someone's capabilities as a nurse.
Yeah.
What they do measure is your critical thinking skills
Mm-hmm.
and your ability to make connections as well as your basic fundamental knowledge, right? It's just to test your knowledge base. Do you have the basic tools that we need you to have to become a nurse, right? When you go into new grad programs or even just a job as a new nurse, there's a period of preceptorship where you
Mm-hmm.
have to learn basically the job, right? There's a whole period of relearning almost. You have the
Yeah.
tools, you have the foundation from nursing school that you've built up over these 4 years. And then so that when you get to the workplace, you're malleable. You have the tools and the things needed already. They don't have to spend this time building in you a fundamental understanding of pathophysiology because you already have that. Now they can
Yeah.
just say, this is what this person has, but because you have that understanding, you can make those connections of, oh, I understand how a disease process works
Mm-hmm.
so that I can better understand this particular disease process that I have never seen or heard of before, but because of what I understand of other diseases and just the fundamentals of how a disease normally works, that I can better understand this one and better understand how to treat patients. And so I think that's what makes sophomore to HESI so stressful and such a big beast, is because you've never done it before. And so up until that point, this is the most major thing that anyone's dealt with, right? It's a make it or break it. You have to pass it. If you don't, then you have to do remediation. If you don't pass remediation, you have to, repeat the semester and so on and so forth. And it's like all of these negative things surrounding it really outweigh the positive, which is this is simply a measure to see, are you ready to move on to the next chapter of nursing school? Did you successfully digest and absorb all of the things that you were taught in the first 2 years? So it's not that the first 2 years of nursing school are there to prepare you to pass that soft 2 HESI. It's more that the soft 2 HESI is kind of taking a sample of what you know and seeing, is this enough? Is what you know enough to get to the next level? And it's not 100%, but it's just there to take some form of measurement, some form of that's what it is, right? It's an aptitude test.
Yeah, and I understand like that it isn't necessarily evil, that it's evaluating maybe to a certain extent our competence of what we've already learned so far. But I think it's just the pressure of, well, for me it was just like, because I know the HESI is coming up, but like before that we had to do class registration for junior 1. I had to run for E-Board for alumni chair and everything like that. And from in the back of my head I was like, man, like I'm so excited to like do everything next semester, but it's like, oh no, I don't even know if I'm gonna make it to next semester yet. It's kind of that pressure that builds up of like having to either get kicked out of the nursing program or repeating the semester.
No, it's definitely a lot. And I definitely don't envy anyone in that position. I remember when I was in that position, it's definitely stressful. It puts a lot on you. You're like, wow, all of these plans I have set up for the next semester can literally come crashing down if you don't pass this one exam, or you might not be able to be in classes with all of your friends because you're a semester behind. And these are very real fears. And I think the good thing is that we have these programs, tutoring, other resources to study and prepare for it, that I think overall there's a lot of ways that you can pass it. But at the same time, also passing the HESI the first time also doesn't really mean a whole lot, because you can pass that first HESI and do poorly on future HESIs because maybe you got lucky and it was a good day or something, and you didn't actually lay the foundation for how to prepare for that type of exam, right? The whole point of the HESI is to hopefully drill good study habits for you to bring with you as you prepare for the NCLEX, which is the real exam that actually matters, right? Why we have a progression policy and all of that is to really ensure that as people move through each year, that they're actually ready for it. You don't want to just throw someone in sink or swim when they're not ready.
Yeah. And do you feel like, in terms of the pressure surrounding the sophomore to HESI, do you feel like it lives up to the hype? Like, is it that bad, or is it more people just blowing it out of proportion in a way?
I think it's a bit of both. I think with nursing, people are stressed out, people are anxious. And when you have anxious people around anxious people, everyone kind of feeds off of each other's energies. And so you have people who aren't de-escalating, they're only getting escalated because everyone's escalated, and so everyone's escalating each other, right? But at the same time, these fears and anxieties and pressures are also very real. And it's normal to feel pressured, it's normal to feel anxious. It's simply because people care, right? It matters to them that they move on, whether for financial reasons, for personal reasons, whatever reasons. No one wants to be held back. They want to stay on track because everyone carved out 4 years for them to finish their nursing education in. And so there's a lot of factors, I think, that go into making it a tough time, on top of, like you said, everyone is just dealing with so many other things, right? You're running for positions in different organizations. You have tests, you have summer plans normally.
Hmm.
You have plans for the next semester normally, although everything's kind of up in the air now. But
Yeah.
everyone does have things they want to achieve, and it's almost like there's a potential obstacle if this doesn't happen. So a lot is riding on passing the exam. And so in
Hmm.
some ways, that stress can be a positive or a negative thing depending on if you're able to harness it or not. But I
Yeah.
think the best advice that I can give for people is to just take it for what it is. It's one exam. It doesn't define you. None of the HESIs define you.
Hmm.
It's simply just a measurement of how much you're able to demonstrate
Hmm. And I
on.
think
It's
the
like a
great
measuring
thing,
stick.
yeah, and I think the great thing about moving the HESI up, although it cuts into our study time, is that because you get those 2 tries for free, or like the second try for free without doing remediation, it does take a lot of the pressure off of
Yeah.
passing it the first time.
Yeah. And that's really nice of USF to be able to offer that opportunity. And it's like, yeah, it's 2 less weeks to prepare. But if you really think about it, you've been preparing for this for two
Hmm.
semesters, a full
Yeah.
year, right? Well,
Hmm.
technically a semester and a half now, but still,
Yeah.
the time you
Yeah.
put into classes, when you really think about it, you guys have Dr. Who's your fundamentals teacher right now?
Maserati.
Balzarati, and then you had, was it Dr. Kwong last semester or Purpura?
Purpura.
Yeah, so with Purpura and Balzarati, and I think some people had Dr. Kwong for fundamentals, the things you learn from those classes, right, are the same things that are really preparing you for the exam, right? When you think of the
Hmm.
exam, you think about safety, you think about priorities, right? It's all about the patient. And so really the test is just trying to see, can you discern that from this situation? Can you see out of these 4 answer choices which one is the safest, right?
Hmm.
It's always asking about prioritization, because that's really what you need to have when you go into the nursing field, right?
Yeah.
When you have your patient, do you make sure the bed's in the lowest lock position before you leave? Do you keep the saddles up, down, their oxygen, their airway, all of these different factors? What's the greatest priority for that particular patient? Because it varies from person to person. And
Hmm.
so that's what the test is really looking for. When you break it down, then you really have been preparing for that for the full year. And so it's
Hmm.
it's kind of like when they move it up, it's 2 less weeks of targeted studying, but it really doesn't cut into your overall study time, right? In the grand scheme of things, 2 weeks doesn't really make a huge difference when you've been doing it for a year.
Yeah, I think it's like when I started having that mindset. Because in the beginning, when I first heard this news about, they're cutting the study time for HESI or just like moving the date up forward, I was extremely stressed. I was very anxious. It almost clouded my judgment and kind of I allowed that uncertainty to set into my mind, which is,
Mm-hmm.
never the best thing to do.
Yeah.
But I think as, when I thought about it more, because you are right that we have been preparing for this HESI and for just being a nurse for this past year. It's like, oh, maybe even though I haven't done that targeted studying for directly for HESI, it's like I've been doing this whole thing for a whole year. Like
Yep.
the style of questions that are asked on the HESI are very similar to what Balzarati does on her quizzes and exams
Mm-hmm.
too. It's about
Yep.
priority. It's about the intervention. What's the most important thing to do, and the knowledge that we gain from fundamentals, nutrition, and patho. Like whether it's like the hyponatremia, all that stuff. It's like all that is already within you, and I think it's your job to, of course, refresh everything for the HESI, but also to kind of trust yourself and to trust the learning process that, oh, you've already done so much. Now just refresh everything and trust yourself that you can get through this.
Yep. Like, it's cliche, but really you do know a lot more than you think you know.
Uh-huh. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
When it really comes down to it, you have all the tools you need. It's, can you harness that? Can you trust yourself? Do you have the confidence to believe that the answer that you want to say is the correct one, versus second guessing yourself and picking an answer that you feel might be more right simply because you don't trust yourself and your initial gut feeling.
And also it's like, well, I don't know this. I don't know if USF has ever or would like send out the facts or the percentage of how many people pass a HESI, but it's just, I feel like obviously the majority of people do pass the HESI, whether it's the first, second, or third try, right? It's not like, I know myself and a lot of people kind of view it as like this impossible task that like who could ever, pass this, but it's like the majority of people, I don't know, do you know the percentage? But like I feel like the majority of people do pass.
I can't speak on the actual percentage, but the majority of people do pass. A large number of people really do pass, whether it's the first, second, or third time. And you can kind of see that from our, just our class retention and how many people are still in our cohort. But really, it's at the end of the day, it's not so much, how many people pass, because whether it's a high or low number, I think for each individual, the thing that matters is how do you feel about the exam, right? How does the exam make you feel? Because the exam doesn't define anybody. Like for me, I didn't pass my first 2 exit HESIs. I just took the second one, 2 days ago, and I didn't pass. But what's important is to take from the first exam to the second exam and look at what's different. Has anything changed? And my score went up by a lot. I really did poorly on the first one. And with the second one, I was honestly just a few questions off from passing. Now, is that something I would be satisfied with? Because everyone says, the goal is to pass, right? You want to get your 850 and move on. But what the important thing there is, would I be satisfied with squeezing by? Because are you really passing? Or do you want to excel, right? So it's not that you don't have the knowledge base. It's how can you put in the time to be able to translate what you know onto your performance on that exam. And so looking at my approach to the first exam and the second one, it's like night and day. I put in much more time. I changed up my habits. I took more time to review. I broke things up more, not sitting there and just staring at a computer for, a few hours and hoping that you absorb some of the stuff that's on the screen, but actually taking smaller chunks of very focused, very isolated time of, okay, this is my time to complete focus, and then taking a break, refreshing yourself, and then coming back later and doing it again. Keeps you fresh, and then also allows you to absorb that more rather than letting yourself be overwhelmed. And so from exam 1 to exam 2, being able to see that improvement. And then also over the years, being able to see different HESIs that I was like, oh yeah, that HESI, I probably did thousands of questions prior to taking it, did very well. Oh yeah, that HESI got cocky, thought I could do it because I'm like, oh, I did well on one HESI, don't need to prepare as hard for this one. And then you can see the score 10. And then so the next one, it's like, okay, well, need to do better, didn't put as much work in, let's put more work in for the next HESI, and then, you do better again. And so you can really see the amount of time that you put in directly translating to how well you end up doing. And I think that's just a testament to how HESI isn't a measure of your abilities as a nurse so much as how much work you put into translating what you know into the exam.
And I feel like from what you said, it's like not necessarily about quantity of like the amount of practice questions you do or like the quantity in terms of the time, but it's more about the quality of how you're studying. Because right now, like people who cram exams or whatever, it's like about quantity in a short amount of time versus like doing quality and expanding that time like day by day, week by week.
100%. And it's like when you're preparing to be a nurse, right? You don't cram to be a nurse. Right? We spend a whole 4 years preparing to do this job, which is to save lives, to help people, to treat people, to be there when they need us, right? To be that healing presence. That just doesn't happen overnight. It's something that you really have to dedicate your life to. It's a lifelong process, right? And the key word there is it's a process. So the same approach can be said with the HESI. I noticed the times that I did better was because I really applied myself. I took the time. I was patient, and you take the time to mull it over and to really be patient and absorb it. Treat it like a process. Treat it like you're preparing to treat a patient in the quality of time that you're spending on preparing for this exam, and then you get to see those results because you're not it becomes almost like a part of you because you're spreading it out over a long period of time, so that answering these questions almost becomes instinctual. You already have a feeling, you know, your instinct is telling you, oh, that's the answer, or that's the answer. And then you can take your knowledge base versus just trying to answer simply on knowledge. But there's only so much you can know, right? Being a nurse isn't about knowing all the answers. It's about having the willingness to find out. And to ask someone who does know. Obviously, you can't do that on the HESI. You can't just search Google. So you want to give yourself the tools to be able to figure it out on the exam, right? That's why testing strategies and just doing questions and being comfortable with the rationales of why one answer might be better than another, so that when you go into the exam, you can look at those 4 answers and say, okay, these answers are clearly a cut above the rest. And then of these 2 answers, which one is clearly better than the others? You know, there's questions that you can easily, oh, I know the knowledge, it's just asking me about my knowledge. And then there's questions where you really have to look over and prioritize that. And I think that becomes more apparent with each successive year's exams, because the first one, with it being fundamentals, majority of it ultimately ends up being patient rights and safety.
And that's nothing
the
new.
majority of what you do.
And that's like nothing new that we're gonna be able to like cram into these 2 weeks. It's like we've been doing it this whole, like all of last semester, all of this semester. We've been through those questions on exams and tests about what is the first thing to do, what's the next step, what's the most important thing for the patient at this moment. So there's nothing new that we can just fit in right now. It's just continuing that learning process. So
I mean, hey, like, you know, all of the sophomore twos, whoever's listening, you know, all of you, you've all got this. You know, you've all put in the work. It's just one extra test. You know, it's like the cherry on top. You just got to get past that, and then you got it. Right? 1, 2, 3 tries, however many tries it takes. There's some people who take their HESI, you know, 3 times, 4. Like, I'm gonna take it 3 times. It doesn't define my capabilities as a nurse. You know, I know I can do what I can do. You just have to pass this test. Right? Whether it takes 3, 4, 5, however many times it takes.
Then, you know, speaking of like about planning for, like, you know, always like planning ahead for the next semester, whether or not it's possible because of the coronavirus or just because of, you know, the obstacle of the HESI. It's like, but now let's say like it's moving forward to next semester where, you know, you're graduating and I'm going on to junior 1. And it's like, you know, because elections just happened last week or 2 weeks ago, you know, we have a new generation of E-Board members coming into the picture.
Do you
have
First of all, congratulations to our new alumni chair.
Thank you. So do you have any comments or maybe concerns? Because the majority of E-Board right now, and even like last year, they were all the same people, and they're all like, I think like at least 10 or like 11 out of the 17 or 16 are seniors and they're graduating. It's like, do you have any comments or concerns about what's going to go on in the future?
I think that with the trajectory of where MSNS has gone, I think I don't really have so much concerns as much as I have a lot to be excited for, I think, because coming from our freshman year with MSNS being so small that we all fit inside a small K-Hall classroom, and we didn't even fill up, you know, more than 2 rows of the seats. And this is K-Hall we're talking about. So we were really small. You know, the retention rate was really low. We had, I think, close to 15, maybe 20 tops people show up for the very, very first meeting. It was on a Sunday. And it was close to early in the school year, so, you know, campus was quiet. Freshmen were just settling in, and so a lot of the people who showed up were freshmen, and not a lot of us came back just because there were a lot of things. It was just so small that it was hard to keep people around. But then over the years, the work that people put in, you know, especially people like Shane and Nick, who really poured their blood, sweat, and tears into building MSNS into what it is now, really the only direction we can go is up, right? There's so many people, 100%. There's so many people who are extremely passionate, extremely involved with the organization. And while it doesn't necessarily have the exact same tight-knit closeness that it did in the sophomore, junior years, which ultimately was just simply a result of how many people were passionate and felt that MSNS was something that was special and felt that MSNS was something that really had a lot of potential. And so people who saw that potential invested a lot of time, and that's how people got close, right? That's how the community really got built, because they felt that, hey, we have something here, we have a community, we have a resource that really can help hold people together and support them and get them through the tough times in nursing school. And so now, even though a lot of the e-board is fresh and new honestly isn't that bad of a thing.
No,
It's,
yeah,
change is always great. It's nice to see that we have become a much more inclusive organization, going from all males only. Now, we can include everyone of all backgrounds, because the goal is to really promote this diversity in nursing, while recognizing that, being a male nurse is tough. It does come with its own issues, right? It's hard to integrate into a workplace sometimes as a male nurse. It's hard to talk to patients sometimes as a male nurse. There's definitely stereotypes and discrimination that occurs, but that same discrimination happens to all people. All nurses experience some form of discrimination depending on what your background is. And so I think what MSNS does really well is to create a platform for people to feel included, to have opportunities where you can be a part of something if you choose to, rather than feeling like you have to. And so I'm really excited. I think, looking down on the names, there's a lot of really awesome people in this list, in the next e-board, that I think have a lot of fresh ideas and new energy to take MSNS as an organization. And I'm excited to see, what happens in the next year, next 2, 3, 4 years, and see what becomes of MSNS as we continue to grow. And I think all I can say is I'm proud of how far we've come, what we've done with the organization over the years. My involvement has kind of been spotty over the years. There've been a lot of things going on, but overall, I think that MSNS has come a long way from, our really short history. So many things have happened, but I like the direction that we're heading with MSNS, and I can't wait to see what happens.
Thank you. And I think I'm just like, I think I really commend you guys, because I think it's very easy seeing, how successful or how, we're building up for MSNS right now. I think it's easy to see why a lot of people would, start joining MSNS. But then back in the day when, it was really small and a lot of people didn't really want to come back to the club or join the club, I think that's where you guys really shine, where it's like, no matter, regardless of who wanted to join, it was not about like the numbers. It was always about, grinding through that difficult process with like-minded people who actually saw a future with this club.
Yeah. 100%.
I think that was so important for like the foundation, building that, structure to help us, the new e-board members, and hopefully, carry on that legacy of what was MSNS and, contribute to what is the future of MSNS.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's, I think it's easy to take for granted certain liberties that you have as a result of your predecessors. There's definitely things that we inherited that were really good from the previous group of members in the organization. And there's, as things change, it's also, I think, easy to forget those core principles. And so I think what's really cool to see is that even though things have changed, we still are holding those core values, those core virtues, really important and central to the mission of what MSNS is trying to achieve. And so, things will change over time as the organization grows, which I think it will. Not to say that it's gonna become NSA level type of involvement or how many people are in it, but definitely as time goes on, there's going to be fluctuation. Maybe there'll be an off year and then you have to build it back up again, but overall there should be a general trending upwards, as long as MSNS still provides what we're promising to provide, right? This open community, this supportive community that allows people to come in and be who they are.
Mm-hmm.
with in solidarity with other like-minded people. I think
Mm-hmm.
that really, as long as that's there, really you can't go wrong wherever
No,
the
100%.
club ends up
Yeah.
going.
And I think no matter what, that core principle is always going to be there. Like I have my own concerns about the future of MSNS and all that, but I think the one thing that's never going to change, whether it's an off year, an off semester with e-board or just members, is community. And
Hmm.
I think because it's, for me, like my mindset is that throughout nursing school, these 4 years, it is like, it's possible to survive nursing school alone without having a support system. It would be way more difficult, but it's possible to survive nursing school alone. But the way I feel like you thrive and develop not only as a nursing student but as a person is to find that support system and community,
Yeah.
and that's already been established with MSNS. Like whether you're a newcomer or whatever, like we all welcome everybody,
Hmm.
and that's something that's, I don't think is ever going to change, because think, like you said, there's like-minded people within the club, and I think the people above us are only going to inspire the underclassmen,
Hmm.
and because of that, we're always going to have that contagious feeling of community or a sense of belonging within MSNS,
Yeah.
and I think that's just really going to carry forward through our journey and
Hmm.
beyond.
Yeah, it's a lot of exciting stuff. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
I think anytime you have a shift in the leadership,
Mm-hmm.
there's always bound to be change, and I'm really excited to see what you guys do, because sometimes you have the same people in the same positions
Mm-hmm.
over time. It does have the potential to get stale, right? People know what to expect with that group, and so when you get a
Yeah.
new group to come in, it's interesting to see what fresh things are being
Mm-hmm.
brought to the table, what additional things, what new things, what things are going to be added to the organization. Where is it going to go from here? Because every year, depending on who's leading it, it's a little bit different, right? The
Mm-hmm.
organization's just slightly got its own unique flavor.
Mm-hmm. I think with change comes more maybe motivation to try to pursue those leadership positions, because I know, because
Yes.
the same people were running every year and like getting the same position, or just like the same people were getting the equal positions, it might have discouraged certain people from running, because like, oh, they're already really good, they are established them well in the community of MSNS, so I know they're going to get it and they're going to do great. But I think now, because there is like a change in leadership, I think more people are going to be more willing to pursue those opportunities and try to be in a leadership role.
Yeah. No,
And like
definitely.
I was curious because like what kind of inspired you to run for e-board? Because I know that just like me, you had never been in that sort of role in high school
Hmm.
or in college before. So what was kind of your mindset going into that, like wanting to be in the e-board?
Yeah, I've definitely held some form of e-board style position
Mm-hmm.
in high school, but just not never really in a capacity where you had so much autonomy to do things. And I think that's part of what made this e-board special was Shane allowed us a lot of autonomy. You
Mm-hmm.
know, he would almost never say no to something. His style was always, you want it to happen, you make it happen. He's
Mm-hmm.
not really going to say no if you believe that you have a plan and you want to execute it, right? When I brought up the idea of a podcast, like, hey, Ryan has this really cool idea, he was kind of just like, you make it happen, and let's do it. Let's
Mm-hmm.
see what happens with it. He's not really one to shy away from it, but at the same time, he also wants you to own that, and I think that made it easier to jump into this position. But
Mm-hmm.
quite frankly, earlier on, I think prior to jumping in, you kind of see how the organization is, and because MSNS is really the only organization that I was really involved in, that I actually ran for a position and held it
Mm-hmm.
for so long. You see what the organization is like. You see the core values, what it's trying to achieve, and then you have your own ideas of how they can be achieved.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, when I see something that I would like to change, I'm gonna go try and change it. I'm not shy about, oh, I wish things were better. If you can do it within your own capabilities, I think it's always worth a try, because the worst thing that could happen is it doesn't work out, but then you know that that doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
But if you see, there were things that I saw about MSNS that I felt like could definitely be improved. There were things I wanted to happen. And so I figured, if you want something to happen, you need to be in a position to make those decisions. And so that was kind of what my motivation was. But at the same time, not having held such a prominent position previously, in high school, a lot of clubs and organizations, the things you need to do are in a much more limited role. You don't have to do usually the club president takes on a lot more, but with how things work here, you really had to take on a lot more. So I was shy at first. So I, did the sort of internship thing. I just kind of follow along and observed how things were being done. But there's definitely a big learning curve the first year that I was alum chair. And I think I could have, I didn't do the best job initially as alum chair, but you learn over time and you kind of get a little bit better. And there's definitely things, that I look back and I'm like, wow, there's things I wish I could have done as alum chair, but then, I don't think you ever get to achieve everything you set out to, but as long as you set your goals and attempt to achieve them, then whatever you don't finish, you just get to pass on to the next guy and say, hey, here's what I didn't get to do, but if you think it's worth it, let's do it. If not, it's your decision, but here's the things that I thought would have been cool. If you think they're cool, you go for it, and I'll be here to support you. I think that's the beauty of this, especially this organization, is a lot of, and any organization really, is getting to pass on to the next generation your kind of hopes and goals for how you want things to go, right? Honestly, and we keep saying it, but it's true. As long as MSNS stays true to being a place for people to feel supported and support each other, as long as that's still there, like what else is there to really want from the group, right?
Yeah. And you stuck with alumni chair for a long time, 3 years, correct?
Yeah.
Like, was there a reason why you stuck with it for so long? Was it because you felt like there were so many goals that you wanted that you haven't accomplished yet, so you wanted to keep pushing it to the next years? Or is it just like, or maybe were there other reasons why you didn't want to go for other roles in MSNS?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I felt like I had unfinished business. And even still now, I'm like, wow, there's so many things I wanted to do that I didn't get to apply, or didn't apply myself to, or didn't get to apply myself as hard as I wanted to. I think really being able to do the podcast now with you, I think this is definitely an icing on the cake. Like, this is like, wow, we're doing something that I didn't expect to, but this is along the lines of things I wanted to achieve before graduating, getting this set up. And so I think that's definitely something that's kept me in this position for so long. There were things that I would consider, like, oh man, maybe I could run for vice, or maybe I could run for president or secretary, or all of these other positions that are also very important. But I think part of this is also recognizing your roles and your capabilities, how you can best support the organization. So could I have ran for other positions, and could I have maybe done them, could I have done a decent job? Probably. But also, you kind of look around and see who would naturally do a better job, who would be a good fit for that. You look around and see everyone has their role, and as if everyone buys into their role and fits their role, then you really get a strong organization. And so it's not to say that, oh, Shane's going to get president no matter who runs against him, we're just going to let Shane run by himself, right? That's not, but also recognizing, how he handles things, how his vision and goals and his way of approaching it, naturally he was the best fit that we could find,
of course,
for that job. And he did an amazing job growing the organization, right? And he's had experience from other organizations. And so what he brought to the position here, I think he's president for 2 years? I think
so, 2 years.
Yeah. So, what he brought in, and each president, definitely brought their own vision and incorporated that, and is, being able to work with Shane for 2 years, you got to see, oh yeah, like, this is how he did, and here's why it worked. But it's also, I think, each group of people requires a different type of leader, a different type of organizer. Right? And so you have to really find the right people for the right job. And so I think over the years, for me, I've kind of accepted my role. I've enjoyed my time as an alum chair a lot. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's I think some people can kind of be like, oh, you know, this position is higher than that position. You know, why not, you know, quote unquote, like move up in the hierarchy? But I think each role is important in what it does.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I didn't complete all of the things I wanted to complete, you know, you do your best to fill that role the best that you can and the best way you know how to,
Mm-hmm.
because you know what that means to the organization. Honestly, you know, I think after, you know, looking back on things and the past 4 years and how the alumni chair has been, I think there's a lot of room for growth, and it might, even in your time, it might even get renamed. The scope of what this position does might change
Mm-hmm.
simply based on a changing need, right? As we're mobilizing to online schooling, so in-person events don't make any sense. How do you bring that to people? So podcasts, other forms of content, ways
Mm-hmm.
of connecting people. And you know, it might even allow you to reach alumnus who aren't able to come back in person but would love to do some form of video call, and you get everyone on that call. You know, there's so many different things you can do as things are so uncertain for the foreseeable
Mm-hmm.
future. You know, you do what you can within your resources, your capabilities. And so I think alumni chair is definitely one of those positions that's going to evolve a lot, because during my time, a lot of the role was kind of being redefined of, okay, what
Mm-hmm.
does this role mean, and what are people interested in, and how does that fit, right? Because it's all
Mm-hmm.
about what people need, and if what people need is no longer being supplied by that role, then that role has to change.
Mm-hmm. And I think the beauty of what either Shane or just MSNS did in general with bringing back interns, or like allowing interns to
Yes,
like
yes.
help the e-board members, because like before, you know, doing all this, I had no idea what the alumni chair was. I didn't know what the responsibilities were.
Yeah.
And I think it's
It's okay, me
just
neither. No, I'm just
and
kidding.
it's just like that internship allows you to not only learn about the role and responsibility of that specific e-board chair, but it just kind of helps introduce or ease you into the idea of falling in love with that role, because
Yeah,
you never really know what you want to do. This goes for, you know, the e-board or just like in life. You really don't know what you want to do until you're exposed to it.
mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
the best thing about that internship that I'm so grateful for is that you and Shane and everybody gave me that opportunity to be exposed to what the alumni chair does
yeah,
and how I'm able now to give back to the community as a
yeah,
result. And
yeah.
I'm super grateful for that.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
did a really great job in
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, like, and that's I think that's what the real goal is, right? This is an organization that really is trying to help people grow and to get them to that next level, however it may
Mm-hmm.
be. And the internship, I think, is a really good way to do that, because you get
Mm-hmm.
a taste for what leadership means, what dedication means in different varying roles, right? It's not to say
Mm-hmm.
that the alumni chair has no leadership or the membership chair has no leadership. It's just how do they exhibit their leadership compared to, say, the secretary or the vice
Mm-hmm.
president or the president or the health and wellness chair. You know, all of these positions are important in their own right, and you get to see more of that, you know, behind the scenes stuff, right? The things that how the gears really turn, how do we oil them, how do we make this whole machine, you know, kind of
Mm-hmm.
work, all of the parts coming together to make something really worthwhile and lasting.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's just, especially for maybe, like, I can see what you mean by like the growth and development as a result of these internships. And I think it's just important because the mentor and mentee program and these internships, I think it really does kind of, I don't want to say force, but it kind of does force you to get out of your comfort zone and try to
Yeah.
grow as a student and person.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think at first, like, because I had never been in any sort of e-board role in high school or middle school or anything. I had no like real leadership experience in terms of clubs.
Yeah.
And I just, for some reason, I feel like through having so many mentors during freshman year and just kind of making myself available a lot for MSNS, you not only fall in love with the ideals of MSNS, but kind of want to try to contribute and help the next generation.
Yeah.
And that's also a problem I guess I had in the beginning, like freshman year or maybe even beginning of sophomore one, is that I think I was too quick to want to get into that leadership role. Not like E-Board per se, but I wanted to fulfill that mentor role a little too fast without learning everything
Mm-hmm.
first. Because I think a part of being a mentor, although you are still learning the process, is like you kind of have to have experience about everything that you're going to teach other people. I didn't have that. I was a freshman, and even sophomore one, I really didn't know anything, but I was just so quick on wanting to help everyone else before I really knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I think once I kind of recognized that about myself, and I understood that, yes, this is a process and that I kind of have to gain my own experience and knowledge first before I can try to pass anything on to the next generation. So I think so I kind of took a step down and said, you know what, like maybe instead of running for an E-Board membership right out of freshman year, which is like, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just like, because I kind of was self-aware that I didn't really have any knowledge or too much experience of what I was doing, I was like, maybe I should just take a step back and try to pursue this internship so I can actually learn from someone who's been through it all.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's important too, because when you're in a position where someone is kind of in a mentee position, as a mentor, I think that also pushes you to do better things. Like I've definitely learned a lot from you and our conversations and our interactions that definitely benefited me and made me a better person, better mentor as a result of that relationship, right? And so I think that kind of shows what MSNS is about, is that no matter if you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, or alumnus, every single person gets to be impacted and gets to be touched by someone else in one way or another. And so it's really cool to see that, no matter what your status, there's always something to learn from someone else. And like you said, it's all about what you have to give, but also sometimes it's about what other people have to give to you, right? The things
100%.
now from the start of the year, and you look back and you go, wow, like I've actually come a long way. I've actually developed a lot of knowledge that now when I really jump into this role, now you feel prepared, right? And that's, I think, what the goal of the internship is whether or not you run for that position, right? Because the hope is that, as an alumni chair, you pick someone or someone chooses to be your intern, and the hope is that that person will like the role and learn enough of the role that the transition to that role over time isn't as big of a leap as someone who has absolutely no experience, doesn't know what the previous person did, and then jumps into that role. And then you have a learning period of, okay, now I have to figure out what exactly am I doing in this position, compared to having someone who's been an intern. You've almost basically been that chair for the year that you were an intern. And then so when you run for a position, if it's that position or a different one, you have more of a knowledge base to bring with you, so that it's not this big confusing jump of, oh, now I have to figure out what I need to do.
Yeah. And maybe for the people listening, like, do you have any advice for someone who's like never ran for E-Board or have been in a leader position to kind of pursue that? Because I know there's a lot of shy people, especially coming in freshman year. I know I was definitely really shy.
Oh yeah,
and
me too.
timid. So do you have any advice about that, of like how you can kind of
I'd
like
say
maybe
just go for it within your limits. Kind of like what you did, right? You recognized where your limitations were. You knew what your comfort level was. You knew that you wanted to pursue a leadership position eventually, but you didn't want to jump right into it, right? Initially, I was like, hey, you want to do this, might as well just be a co-chair. You just you can just do this thing with me. But then you took a step back, you thought about it, and you're like, yeah, you know what? I don't think I'm quite ready for that. I'm just gonna take a step back, do this internship thing, and really get to know the role before I decide to commit. And I think that's something that's really hard to do, but it's also something that I think is also necessary, to know your limits, to know what you're comfortable with, and to be able to recognize that and then go with that. You always want to follow your heart, you want to follow your gut,
Mm-hmm.
and do what you feel is right. So when it comes to running, it's not a one size fits all, like everyone should run, but you should do what you can within your capabilities. So even if
Mm-hmm.
someone who's shy, you can still be involved in MSNS without any leadership position. You can
Yeah.
show up to the events, you can be involved, or if you want to take more of a background role, there are definitely things that you don't necessarily have to be up in front of everyone's faces all the
Mm-hmm.
time. As e-board, there's certain positions that allow you to take more of a step back and do
Mm-hmm.
more behind the scenes things that a lot of people don't really see much, but that are still important to the organization.
Mm-hmm.
There's also, now that we have a sort of internship program, it allows this transition of member to e-board to really be smooth. Right now,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of prospective e-board members. They still have to run,
No, yeah.
right? Assuming someone runs against them. They still have to run for the position, but at least you have people who get a taste. So even if they choose not to pursue e-board, they at least have an idea of what being on the e-board entails. And I think that really
Mm-hmm.
just strengthens the community as a whole, because it's very easy to have an e-board and members mentality, an us and them type of
Mm-hmm.
dynamic. But what
Yeah.
MSNS does really well is really integrate everyone, so that it's not like, oh my God, that's the president, they're untouchable. It's more like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, no, they're the president, but they're still a member in this organization. They're still a part
Mm-hmm.
of everybody else. So I think, it's okay to be shy,
Mm-hmm.
different. That's just based on your experiences, your personality, what your comfort levels are. But as long as you do what you can, really making MSNS your experience. If you want to do e-board, go for it. But not everyone
Mm-hmm.
wants to do e-board. You can still be involved in MSNS without doing that. But for the people who want to pursue a position but feel a little too timid, or maybe you might feel like, oh, I can't, I might not be the best person for the job, I say just do it anyways.
Let's
You
try
really
it.
have
Yeah.
nothing to lose.
Mm-hmm.
If the only thing that's stopping, really the only person stopping you is yourself, right? No one's ever going to say, oh, you shouldn't run for e-board.
Mm-hmm.
Why not, right? If someone takes the time to run for e-board, really puts in that time, I don't see why they can't do it, because they at least took the time to run for a position. They put themselves out there.
That is true. Yeah.
It takes a lot to simply say, hey, my name is so-and-so and I'm running for e-board. You have to, record yourself and
Mm-hmm.
prepare a script, prepare the things you want to do for the organization. That takes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So if
I
you can
think
even get to
you.
that point, why not do it?
Mm-hmm. That's very true. And I think you bring up an important part where you don't have to be a part of the e-board to even have a lasting impact on MSNS.
Oh yeah.
It's really it's cliche, but it's really what you get what you put out of it. If you want to, because even me as an intern, where I really didn't have too much authority, and I wasn't even in the group chat where I could really talk. But even that, everybody that I talked to who were on the e-board were super open to ideas.
Yeah.
It's not an autonomy where oh, I have the final say, I can, it's just I'm only gonna do what I want to do. It's no, everybody on the e-board is super super open to ideas, suggestions, and for help. And that,
Yeah.
I feel like that's something that I really wanted to do freshman year and this year, where even though I wasn't on the e-board per se, I was still trying to contact a lot of people, whether it was the sophomore representative or the alumni chair. I was still trying to do my part to not only help MSNS, but have that lasting impact on MSNS, whether or not I was on the e-board.
Yeah.
So it's every member is important to MSNS. It's not just,
Yeah.
Oh, the members, the puny little members, just paying dues and participate. It's no, everybody is super, super important for MSNS.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's really what you put out. If you're just there to get the points, to get the was it the sash or the stole for graduation,
yeah.
Go for it. Thank you for participating and
Yeah.
helping. But at the time, it's everybody has the potential to do so much more.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, MSNS is just the sum of its parts, right?
Yeah.
MSNS is only as great as its members, as the people putting in that time and the effort. So you need E-Board to do more of the logistical things, right? The behind the scenes, organizing, contacting sites and or partners and stuff to get these events set up. But you still need people to show up.
Yeah.
If you don't have people showing up to these events, it doesn't matter how great your e-board is, there's still only 10 to 15, 20 people in the organization. You need the other, 80 that we have now, or however many people we have. We have a lot of active members.
Yeah.
And so, the 100 people total, we need every single person. So it doesn't necessarily have to be e-board, but you make your impact, you do what you can. And I know we definitely have people who show up to most of the events, if not all of the events, and make it a good time for everybody. They're not e-board, but they're still important.
Yeah, and I think that's so awesome that we're doing the member of the month things now.
Yeah. Speaking of which,
Jesus,
member of the year.
I wasn't trying to do that. Okay, thank you. I wasn't trying to do that though, but like, thank you. But yeah, like for the member of the month, I think it's super important because there are a lot of people that might not want to have that loud voice. We're standing in front of everybody else to kind of show or prove themselves. I think it's so important to acknowledge the people that are in the back. They're doing everything they can. They're participating. They're being active in the club and wanting to help, but maybe not being recognized or being at the front. But I feel like it's so important, like, yes, do the member of the month so that we can recognize the people that are doing all that hard work. They might not necessarily be, at the top, but you know what? You deserve to be recognized. Everybody who's working hard in nursing school and contributing to this club should be recognized.
Yeah, 100%. And that's really what it is, right? Everyone doing their part. And so it's not so much that the e-board's, at the top of the organization, because really everyone's at the same level. It's just that everyone has their role that they're filling, and being a member is a very, very important role, because clubs without members simply just fall apart. You can't just have everyone on the e-board, which was kind of what it was for a year or so. It was just like everyone in MSNS, you show up to the events and it's like e-board. Okay, it's basically an e-board meeting, but let's still have fun with this event. And then over time, as it grows, then you show up to events sometimes and you're like, wow, there's a lot of people that I don't really know yet, but you get to know people.
Yeah. I don't know how long. I feel like we've been talking forever. Like before we end anything, I just want to talk about like quarantine or like shelter in place and what are some of the things that you kind of miss from being in this quarantine for so long? Like what are some things that you probably took for granted and you kind of like once everything hopefully comes back to somewhat of a normal state, like what are you going to go back to?
I think seeing my friends in person, I've been calling and checking up on people, catching up, but it really isn't the same as when you get to spend that quality time with people, getting to see them, going places, going out to eat, going out to just the beach or just to the top of a hill, just to look over and see the scenery, enjoy the outdoors together. I think is one of the things I miss a lot. Going to play basketball, sports, MS. We were supposed to have Merce Madness, but that didn't happen. But we'll cross each other's ankles up later.
Yeah, for sure.
That's definitely one. I think with being a commuter, I don't completely miss the commute, but sometimes you do. And now, you look back and you go, wow, I complain all the time about having this long drive. And then now you're just stuck at home. So in some ways, you almost kind of miss the commute. Not really, but just a tiny bit.
No, I understand that because I also commute and I'm just like not as far as you have to, but like I commute too. And I'm just like, man, I kind of miss driving. I kind of miss that kind of warming up, getting ready for classes by just driving, listen to music or a podcast. I'm like, damn, those were the days.
Yeah, so I think you miss a little bit of ordinary life for sure. And I think when we get back to normal, things really never will be truly normal as we knew it. So it's nice to look back and think about all the things that you didn't really have to worry about. Like everyone's hand hygiene hopefully now is much better.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've been very mindful of trying to avoid touching my face as much as I can, because I
Mm-hmm.
used to be a big face toucher. And,
Mm-hmm.
statistics show you touch your face like, I don't know if it's 100 or thousands of times a day. So, it's just these little things that add up, but also how lucky are we to be in a position to think about the things we missed as a result of quarantine and what things we would like to get back to out of this.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of people who aren't able to consider that, people who really their focus is simply, how do I get through quarantine? Will I survive
Mm-hmm.
another month? And it's not just our country, it's other countries too. I have
Oh
friends
yeah.
in other countries who are really struggling to get by as a result of this. And so people are really getting affected. And so I think the biggest hope for me out of this whole thing is that we change things. Our healthcare
Mm-hmm.
system needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
How we operate as a society needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
How we support people needs to change. And my hope is that, seeing how California has handled the situation, I hope that California is able to really take a step in the right direction as far as what things we implement to help people, so that in a time of crisis that we're really supporting the lives, because people matter the most, right? All of these other things doesn't matter if you don't have people.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we make sure that people are able to not only stay healthy, but also staying safe and having their needs met? And so I hope that, out of all of this, we learn the pieces and parts of our system and systems that are broken, and hopefully find ways to fix them.
Mm-hmm. Well said. All right, well, I think that's a good way to end it. Thank you
Yeah.
everyone for watching,
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Hopefully we'll have a very special guest join us for the next one.
Mm-hmm.
If we're able to get that, then it'll be a nice little surprise. All right.